first off, we want to know who you are and what you do and maybe your favorite game. And we'll start with Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Villarreal, and I've been in the gaming industry as a host, producer, writer, show creator since about 2006. I used to work at Machinima with this lovely lady right here. She was my executive producer, and we had a lot of fun. And I have since transitioned into virtual reality software development. So my business partner and I created a VR company about 2.5, 3 years ago. And we're a two-person team, and we are self-taught. We taught ourselves the Unreal Engine, and our first program, there you go, our first program, Stonehenge VR, actually landed itself into 2 museums across America, one at the, thank you guys, thank you so much. One at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle, that was a limited run, but we are currently at the museum at Prairie Fire in Overland Park, Kansas right now, so very cool. All right, Chelsea.
Hey guys, I'm Chelsea Delbridge, Director of Social Media and Audience Development with Machinima. I oversee all of their social platforms, so for us that means Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, although don't look at Instagram right now. We'll get there.
Everyone is now on Instagram looking at
Please check Facebook and Twitter, okay? So I first started working in games back in the day when G4 was alive and Attack of the Show as well. Sounds like there's some sympathizers. I used to be a producer on Attack of the Show, so that was sort of my first foray into the industry. Beyond that, I've just always been a fan of gaming as a kid, I think like the rest of us. I did fall off for most of my life in adult years. I am a little bit of a poser. I'm not like an avid gamer, but right now I've got a serious kick for PUBG, so I'm making my way back in. Got my first headshot the other day. Woo!
Nice. All right, Nicole.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Blalock. I am an associate esports manager on the Blizzard esports team. That probably doesn't mean a whole lot to anyone, but what it does mean is that instead of working on one specific tournament project for Hearthstone, I actually work cross-product. So I'm a media producer on some upcoming video series that we have coming out for the team.
All right, Michele.
Hi. My name is Michele Morrow. I'm a host, I'm an actress, I'm an executive producer. I've kind of been all over the gaming industry. I'm a voiceover artist. I'm a Lyria in Hearthstone, as well as several other games. And I created a show for YouTube Red called GoodGame, which is an esports comedy. And I've been in gaming, I've gamed my entire life, but I moved out to Los Angeles to be an actress. I got into a really bad accident, and when I did, I found gaming kind of as an escape for me and in a place where I could heal. And through that, I came up through the community, and I started hosting BlizzCon and Heroes of the Dorm, the first Heroes of the Dorm on ESPN2. And I've been really grateful and lucky to work for some really cool companies like eLeague and Nerdist and Geek and Sundry. So I've kind of been all over the place, and now I'm focusing on my company, Under Pressure Productions, that will create more really cool content for gamers.
Great. And Catarina?
Hi everyone, I'm Catarina. I work at Xbox. I'm a program manager in the Xbox Live social team. So we basically build all the cool social features of Xbox Live that you see, all the messaging and all the community enablement stuff that we do there. I'm originally from Portugal. I moved to the US 2 years ago to get this job. So it's really a dream come true. Gaming has been a part of my life since forever, and esports was actually the thing that pulled me in. I used to play Gears of War 1 and 2 competitively, and I tried Halo. I tried to be, I'm not too good though, but I do love the game. So yeah.
Sure. All right, so kind of we've gotten a little bit of background from you guys, what got you into gaming. How would you say the industry has changed since you guys got into the industry or just started gaming in general?
So when I started in about 2006, there were like 8 gaming blogs that I would go to get my news, like Joystick, rest in peace, Kotaku, yes, yeah. GamePro magazine, you know, those were the go-tos. But now it's like everywhere you look, there's gaming news. It's so accessible. It's crazy how far we've come. Also, I remember my first E3 was 2006, and I was a booth babe. And I remember I was there, and I was just like handing out flyers. The next 2 years, it turned into the E3 Business and Media Summit and transitioned to this very 60,000 attendees to 5,000 attendees. It was crazy. It was at Santa Monica in these hotel rooms, and you would see these people wheeling like their giant carts of like camera equipment down like the beaches of Santa Monica. That obviously didn't work out too well. 2009 came around. They were much more serious, but they were asking women to leave because they were dressed a little too provocatively, because booth babes were just outlawed. But here we are in 2017, 2018, and a lot of the women that you do see, they are actually demoing the games now and guiding people through the games, and they're dressed very professionally and in business casual. And if they are dressed in costumes, they're very cute and relevant to the booth that they are at. And so I just think it's really great to see how far the representation of women at E3 has come. And then another thing that I've noticed that has changed is back in 2006, you know, like for me, like an idol was like someone like a John Carmack or a Tim Sweeney. And those were who the fans were talking about. And it just seems like it has since been this seismic shift into now people are talking about the streamers and the content creators, and those are where the fans come from. And I just think that's a really interesting change, because you just don't really see that in any other medium. Like if someone is a big fan and watches Steven Spielberg movies, that fan isn't bigger than Steven Spielberg, but it's like these content creators are becoming bigger than the game makers and the engineers and the developers, because gaming is now a status symbol. Like if you are good at gaming, you are looked at differently and you are envied. And it used to not be like that, you know? I think we all know and hear the stories about how we were sort of looked at differently because we liked to play games. So it's really exciting to see how far video games have come and the evolution of them. And I'm just so happy that we're all here celebrating that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Chelsea, I mean, I'd love to hear your feedback and how you think the industry shifted too, especially in the early like G4 days and the type of content that we see now, and just the advent of streamers and content creators.
Yeah, no doubt. So, you know, one of the, of course, as Jess touched on, one of the biggest shifts in the industry has been the pivot from, you know, it being a one-directional funnel of content to suddenly UGC or user-generated content is king these days. You know, we're seeing guys like Ninja, who were, you know, kind of mid-tier, low-tier dudes like last year, suddenly be breaking records on Twitch and having celebrities like Drake sit down with them and play, you know, games with them. And I think that that's testament to the fact that there's a bigger shift, something more seismic happening, and that is gaming used to be some sort of a niche fringe culture. You know, it almost had negative connotations where we were like the basement dwellers, you know, that fed on Doritos and Code Red Mountain Dew. And now there's
Cool Ranch for life. Sorry.
Right. Oh yeah, there we go. Four Loko. No, and now there's and now there's barcades in Glendale, you know, and in Silver Lake and downtown. And now, like I said, Drake is getting on, you know, we see these A-list celebrities getting on stream with, you know, Twitch streamers and YouTubers. And we see movies being created and television shows being created off of game IP. We see esports arenas selling out, you know, thousands of people, you know, sometimes to the tune of 100,000 plus. And we see esports on network television, often in primetime spots. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So what I'm saying is, all this adds up to what used to be, you know, G4 sort of like the, oh yeah, games, geeks, nerds, and internet, is now a very mainstream element of pop culture. In fact, I would argue that gaming is the new pop culture, or is quickly moving into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nicole?
Yeah, to follow up on that, so I'm fairly new to the esports industry. I've only been in the industry about a year and a half, but I've been a gamer all my life. And just like the other two ladies here have said, you know, it used to be this very hidden thing. It wasn't something that even back a dozen years ago when I was graduating from college that I thought of as a career path. And now we're coming up into the mainstream. People are becoming familiar with not just the path of being a game developer, but of all of the different support around that in esports, you know, producing live events, producing broadcasts. So events like this are really a piece of that. And I think how we're going to continue to grow the industry and how we're going to propel it to really the next level.
Mm-hmm. Michele?
I got a mic.
Oh, nice.
Well, you talk about how the industry has changed, right? And we're talking about gaming and we're talking about esports. And in my opinion, those are two different subjects. I've seen these things change at different rates, at different paces. Gaming 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was coming into it, it was, I remember I had done an interview in Fangoria magazine after a horror movie I had done, and the interviewer had asked, well, what are you doing in your spare time? And I was like, I'm playing World of Warcraft. And he's like, you played World of Warcraft? And he was shocked, and it was this big, like, and I'm like, why are you surprised? Like, because I didn't really know it was so taboo. I never felt that. I grew up in, like, you know, the 80s where it didn't really matter. Like, I'm 40, so, like, it didn't really matter growing up if you were a boy or a girl. Like, all the Atari commercials and, like, the early ones, it was boys and girls playing games together with their families. Go back and watch the commercials on YouTube. They're actually really funny. But then you see somewhere along, you know, the mid 80s when the Nintendo came out, the NES came out, and you saw this, like, this shift where it became about, you know, selling it to little boys. And, you know, it was marketing. You know, it wasn't about who likes it or who doesn't like it. It was about people deciding what you were gonna like or what you weren't gonna like based on your gender. But I kind of missed that little blip that I think some of you unfortunately had to deal with a little bit differently. So when the guy asked me and he's like, you played World of Warcraft? I'm like, yes, what, why? You know, and now the question is, you still play World of Warcraft? So, you know, I think for gaming, it's changed a little bit in that way. And for esports, though, it's different. You know, when I came into esports, you know, 3 or 4 years ago during the first Heroes of the Dorm, I came onto the scene as the first host of that. And what I didn't realize is there were a lot of people who have been working their asses off to try and get to the position that I had. And I didn't really know why I got it or how it happened. I wasn't as into esports as everyone else was, but Heroes of the Storm was a brand new game and I was excited to be in it. And what I noticed was that there were so many gatekeepers, like crazy gatekeepers, people who didn't want to let me in just because there were other people that they felt should have been there before me. And what you got to make sure is in times like that you don't let them get to you. Because I did let them get to me. I think my friend Christine is here when I had like a meltdown over it. But I really encourage everyone, if someone's coming at you like that, because in esports, it's still like that to a certain degree. You're still gonna have a hard time from time, you know. I'm not seeing these massive shifts yet in acceptance in the way that we are in regular video games. I think in regular video game culture, we're being far more accepting. But in esports, I still think we've got a lot of work to do. But I am seeing it in 2018 specifically, and I think since Overwatch League has come out, and I think since the FGC has come up, and there's a lot of women really participating in the FGC, which is just such an incredible community. I think it is changing, but just be aware that we're not fully there, you know, yet. That's just kind of my take. They're different.
Catarina, what about you? How do you think the industry has shifted?
Yeah, I think the thing that's the most interesting to me is actually about the perception about what the gaming industry is. So I guess some of you can relate to this. Like when I've played all my life, and my parents weren't really too fond of that. I always had to argue like, I want to play a game. Can I play for, I don't know, X amount of hours? And it was always a big argument at home, and it was always been. And since I started playing Gears of War competitively, and because I wanted to be good and I wanted to practice, like those 1-2 hours a day had to become like 5 to 6 hours a day. And so arguments just got more intense. Like my parents could not understand why would I prefer to spend my time playing video games although I was like having the time of my life, I was spending that time with my friends and my teammates, and I was just like building relationships for life. Like I'm still friends with those people. And I think what really changed is I went back home to Portugal last Christmas. And so because I'm new, like I've been with Xbox for a year now. And so basically everyone, like I did not have to explain my job. Like everyone knows what gaming is. Everyone knows what esports are. It's like, it's just, the fact that they didn't have to ask me like, so, okay, they did ask me what I did at Xbox, but no one asked me like, what is Xbox? Or why would you like to do that? Or like nothing. So the fact that everyone just knows what gaming is, what gamers are, that there are esports and competitions out there, and you don't have to go and like explain everything and why do you like it, and it's not for you, I think that's the biggest change.
Can I jump in on that?
Of course, please.
So I experienced something similar, but not from actually playing games. I experienced it from jumping into the games industry. You know, my father is amazing and has always been supportive of everything I've done in my life, so no shade here. But, you know, I did come to Machinima from the NFL. So my father raising me on football was probably his proudest moment was when I started working for the NFL. It was like I may as well have been drafted in the first round, you know? So when I told Dad after a few years at the NFL, I'm like, hey, you know, there's this cool opportunity with Machinima. And he was like, what? You know, and I'm like, it's this, you know, game entertainment company, it's digital. And he was like, wait, so you're making video games? And I was like, no, I'm not making wait, you're leaving the NFL to go to Machinima? And I was like, no, Dad, Machinima, you know, yeah. So anyway, I experienced very much the having to justify to an older generation why I wanted to enter the games industry as a professional. You know, not having to defend the enjoyment of playing games, but as having to convince that generation, my parents' generation, that, hey, this is a real thing. This is a viable thing. And for all of you who are fighting that fight every day, just remind Mom and Dad, 150 million people in the United States identify as gamers. 150 million people. That is half of the US % of our population. Think about that. Mm-hmm. A lot of opportunity.
So going off at Chelsea's point, did you have to convince your parents or loved ones or anyone that you wanted to get into gaming and, you know, justify why?
Well, not really, because I mean, I asked my dad how I got into gaming and where I got my first console from, and he was like, you and your sister asked me for the Sega Master System, so that's what he bought for us, and my first game was Zaxxon. And
I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's like a little 3D little ship that's you go around and shoot stuff. But
sounds about like those. Yeah.
No. And so my dad has always been incredibly supportive of my gaming background, and I think it has a lot to do with that he was a gamer himself and is still a gamer to this day. I play PC games with him every single night. Every single night, we're playing PUBG or we're playing Destiny 2, and we bonded over, you know, Diablo 2, Lords of Destruction back in the early 2000s. We had PCs that sat right next to each other, and we would talk to each other and play, but he lives in Texas now, and so we just play online every night. And it's hilarious because Texas is 2 hours ahead of us, and he will outplay me. He'll be like, one more round. And I'm like, Dad, I gotta go to bed. And he's like, okay. So he's always been incredibly supportive, and he's seen all of my work. The show that I created, Best Game Show Ever, he watched every single one of those episodes, and, you know, oh, thank you. Thank you. And so, yeah, and my sister, she loves to play games too, and we would always play together. So I've always been very fortunate to have that support background, that when I said I wanted to go into the video game industry, there was no question about it. So
Jessica living the dream over here. Nicole, what's been your experience? Did you have to sell and convince anyone in your life that it was a viable career?
No, so my dad also got me into gaming, but he's actually not a gamer at all. So you know, my parents bought me my first console way back in the 90s, and my dad and I played games together at, you know, that time for a few years, and then he continued on to be an adult, and I continued to game as I grew up. moving from console to computer, Tides of Darkness, that's Warcraft 2. That was my first computer game. So I have been a Blizzard fan for a very, very long time. And it was just always something that I did, along with all of the other things that I did. So there was never really any sort of stigma about it that was built into my life. Now, I went on, my educational background is in a completely different field. I have a doctorate in education policy, so I was teaching at a university prior to coming over into the esports industry. So by that point in my life, about a year and a half ago, when I called my parents and said that I was joining Blizzard and kind of tried to describe what I was going to do because they had no idea really what esports was, they just kind of responded with, okay. Sure, yeah, whatever you're gonna do. I've been very fortunate because my parents have always been about whatever it is that brings me happiness, and since getting out of the academic space and getting into the space of esports and having these wonderful supportive communities around me as I work on all of these creative projects, I have just sort of blossomed in this, Nikki said it in the first panel, she has her Blizzard family at work, and it really is like that on our esports team, and thankfully that has translated into my parents seeing that, and so they are happy and thankful for that being in my life as well.
Great. Yeah, Michele?
Well, my mom thought William Shatner was super hot, and he was the spokesman for the Commodore 64, so she bought us a computer when it was in the early 80s. And I played Tooth Invaders and Impossible Mission and a bunch of games that you guys have never heard of. But so gaming was always a part of who I was. And then, it was more like I moved to LA to be an actress. So when I said I wanted to do gaming, my parents were like, thank God. But I was like, hold on, guys, I'll figure out a way to weave it in, but more on that later.
Yeah, so it was hard convincing my parents that gaming was a thing. I actually got a master's in computer science because that was my way of okay, maybe I won't make a living. At the time, I wouldn't make a living out of playing video games, especially in Portugal. I probably will try to attempt to be a game developer and just make games. So I got my bachelor's, I got my master's. My parents were super proud of me. I got all of that done. My dad thought I would be doing security stuff because he thought that, or he thinks that's the future, and it probably is in that area. And I was like, Dad, I really think I want to be a game developer though. And he was, I had to do some convincing there. But I was like, this is really what I'm passionate about. My mom was super supportive of me always. She's like, definitely follow your dreams. And right now, and just because the whole conversation we were having before about perception, they're now the biggest fans of everything related to gaming and all my work and everything I do. They're always on top of the news saying hey, this just came out. And I'm like, Dad, I'm on top of the news. I know what's going on. But I appreciate the passion coming from them. It really brightens my day every time. We have a little group chat because they are 8 hours ahead of me. So that's usually how we communicate. And so basically, every time they send me something, or even if I post something on Facebook, they share it with me. And then they are like, we're super proud of you. And it's just keep going. And it's I love them to death. And they're my biggest fans. So yeah.
Aww, that's very sweet. So let's talk about developing content or games with female gaze in mind. Do you think that the development is different when you're trying to create something to appeal to everyone? We're seeing, a lot, there's obviously a lot of male protagonists in gaming. So do you keep that in mind when you're thinking of content or games, Jessica?
Well, with Stonehenge VR, we didn't really have a male or female in mind. We just knew that we wanted to create something that would inspire and catch people's attention and make them think. We've had multiple responses from many people who have tried Stonehenge VR, and a lot of the responses that we get are very emotional. We've had people tear up or cry after they take the headset off. And one of my favorite stories is actually a woman who grew up next to Stonehenge in Wiltshire, England. And she said she was always forced to go there as a kid on these field trips, and it was cold and it was raining. There was 800 other field trips there, and it was loud. But when she did our experience, it was different, and it reminded her of the beauty of things through our storytelling. And I think that was mainly our goal, was to invoke this emotion in someone that gets them to think, because I feel like once people start to think and use different parts of their brain in that way and have this sort of inspiration within them, that's where the real change on the outside starts to happen too. So
do you think that's because there is no avatar like representation in your experience, that it's for everyone, because it's just, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically just a pair of eyes that are being, guided through this. And there is pacing, and there's music, and there's, a guided voice that's sort of telling you what's going on. But I also think a lot of people don't really realize the magic behind what Stonehenge is. I mean, I've heard so many times, what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of rocks in a field. And it's like that. I get so upset when I hear that explanation of it, or the way people perceive that, because it's like, this thing is thousands of years old. Like, how can you not think that this ancient monument meant something to someone a long time ago? I just think it helps people sort of realize that there's something else out there.
So Chelsea, do you think about the kind of the female fan when you're developing content for Machinima, or is it just like, we're just trying to make really good content for everyone and hope it sticks?
Well, that's a great question. One of the biggest mistakes that anyone in marketing can make is like, let's just make great content and hope somebody likes it. Like, everybody's our audience. So, I can actually back into this one as somebody in the industry who works on a media platform side. And I can tell you that when people hear gaming, when companies hear gaming, their first reaction is males 18 to 34, and hopefully boys 13 to 17. There are no females thought of within that scope. Females are a reach audience. Females are what we hope to grow into and hope to acquire. So with that context, in my job and my position, we've done a very good job of engaging males 18 to 34. In fact, that's like 90% of our audience. Males 13 to 17 is like another, this math doesn't add up, 20% of our audience. Regardless, they're a big part of those two chunks. We've done a pretty good job of checking the boxes on. It is my job to continue engaging that audience. However, we do actively try to program into, a broader audience, which is that more female audience. And the way that we've done that since I took the reins about 2.5 years ago was to have our programming pivot from being, I don't know how many of you were familiar with Machinima a few years ago, but it was a little bit of a trolley culture. And so Michele knows what's up. So when I took over the platforms about 2.5 years ago, one of the first things that I wanted to tackle was making this more of an inclusive brand than a relatively toxic one. And so for me, being a female that leads the social platforms, I often joke like, oh, don't tell them, they'll come with their pitchforks and, freak out. But that's kind of a sad joke with a little element of truth there. We published a piece recently where we partnered with a nonprofit called I Need Diverse Games. And the piece was titled, Gaming Has a Diversity Problem. And it blew up. We had, I think like 9 million views on it, which for that type of content isn't something that we generally break more than 4 million views on. And it had like over 300,000 comments. People were just duking it out. Now, the sad truth was there were some really disappointing comments. That did dishearten me, but it didn't make me second guess my choice to program that. In fact, it reassured me that we needed to program that, and we continue to need to program those sorts of pieces, because whether people want to hear it or not, they need to be exposed to these sorts of issues whether they feel they can relate to them or not, whether they feel they're a problem or not. Because I'll tell you, we went in and looked at, who was commenting and who was coming with their pitchforks and, flaming broomsticks, marching down to knock on our doors and tell us all about how gaming didn't have a diversity problem. And it was the demographic that you would have assumed it was.
All right, Nicole, do you want to talk about developing esports content with everyone in mind, or females specifically?
Yeah, actually, that is a perfect segue there, because every voice matters is one of the Blizzard core values, and we are all about inclusivity. There's no place for any sort of intolerance or violence in, whether you're talking about our games, our events, or out in our communities. So that's really a big part of how Blizzard approaches everything that they do.
Mm-hmm. All right, Michele?
Well, I created this show called GoodGame, and I wanted Hollywood to understand gaming, and that was fun. Lots of really interesting conversations that I had to explain things about our community, to try to make content for gamers that we could show our friends and be proud of. And that was I tried to take all of my experiences and all of the gatekeepers I mentioned earlier, and all of the crappy things anybody said, or things that happened to my friends, or just things that I watched because I was behind the scenes, and I saw so much as esports started to grow after doing the very first Heroes of the Dorm. And you just kind of just watched it grow in front of me. So when I created GoodGame, it was really important to me to have 2 girls on the team. It's a MOBA. It's a fake video game inside of it called Killcore, it was really important to do that. And I had a lot of people kind of give me flack and be like, well, shouldn't it just be the one girls so we can make it about, having a girl? And I'm like, how about we make it about 2 girls, and it's about the team, and make it about that and how they figure out how to get along. And, and just thinking about in general, like, that's our audience. There's so many female gamers. So for me and my partners, it was really important to try to represent everybody as much as we could. And you do get handcuffs, right? Like, there's only so much Hollywood will let you do. They're paying for it. So you have to be able to get as much as you can while we had to still think about the mainstream. We had to still think, how do we explain what a MOBA is? How do we say MOBA? And we just say, well, that's a dumb word. We try to make fun of it so that gamers can laugh about it, but the mainstream can still understand it. And I think we have a bridge that we have to work on, all of us together, right? Is bridging the mainstream and esports and gaming, and making sure that when we're representing it to our friends and to people who don't understand gaming, trying to give them a window in so that they can see it a little bit differently, whether it's through a television series, available on YouTube, Red, you should totally watch it. Or, through just being able to go to an esports event, bring your friends, there's so many that go on in Los Angeles or anywhere. So anyway, to me, it was very important. Go ahead.
Catarina?
Yeah, every time, like in Xbox Live, when we are thinking about building new features, and especially because I work in the social side of things, we definitely keep all of our audience in mind. And actually, our audience is almost half-half, so we have half males and almost half females. It's 40-something females. So it's actually a super diverse community, and we want to make sure that we're building and developing the right things for everyone. And so I think definitely with everything we have and all the games we have out for our platforms, we have something out there for everyone, and places where if you're some style of gaming, or if you are you identify with a gender or something, you will find something out there where you will be able to have fun yourself. A very good example is last year we released the clubs feature. So basically you can go and create a club and be with your friends. You can create looking for groups, which is basically hey, I'm this person and I associate all these tags with I want to play Overwatch, but I'm looking for cooperative players who do not do trash talking. Or the exact opposite, if you want super competitive players and you want to trash talk, and that's your definition of fun, then we also support that. But then we make it very clear that, okay, this is what you're looking for, so these are the gamers that will come to you. And so I think definitely having this thought process and having a diverse team helps in that. Just like bringing that voice when we're discussing these kind of features is really, really important.
Sure. Also, we'll start with Catarina. What was one thing you wish you would have known getting into the gaming industry?
That's a good question.
We can come back to you.
Yeah.
You want to come back, Michele? What's one thing you wish you would have known?
One thing is hard, Mandy.
I'm sorry. We only have a certain amount of time
Very difficult. I wish I would have known that you're gonna fail a lot, and that's okay. I wish I would have known it was okay to fail, because failing I've learned it before, but with gaming, it always felt a little bit more scrutinized because I was a woman. Just a little bit once I started to get into it. So I just wish I would have known that, like, it's okay to fail. You're gonna fail. You have to work hard to make it, but then you have to master it. You have to work hard to do this. Failure is okay. You're gonna fall. That's pretty much it.
All right. Nicole?
I think for me, the one thing is I wish that I had known sooner how much happiness I would have in this community, that making this community my actual professional community would bring so much to me. So I think that's why events like this are so important, because, like I mentioned, this was not something that I was looking at as a career path for many, many years, for my entire life, really, until very recently. And so if I had known that, I would have probably jumped in a lot sooner.
Great. Chelsea?
I don't mean to bring this down a notch, because that was really nice. And I agree, working in the games industry is a lot of fun. But one thing that everyone should be aware of is, especially as a female in the industry, there will be people who do not want to see you succeed. There will be people who are threatened by your success. And there will be people who will try to intentionally tear you down when you achieve success, whether it's in the public eye or internally at your company. Why I'm bringing this up is that you always have to run your own race. Don't let them get you down. Be the change that you want to see in the world, to quote Gandhi. And was a smart dude. And always just move forward with a positive attitude, and especially for all the ladies out there, find sisters in the fellow women at your company. Don't look at them as enemies, because when you do that, you are hurting our entire cause.
Yes. Preach. Yes. All right, Jessica.
Yeah, no, I mean, what Chelsea and Michele both have said, I 100% agree with and can relate to, and sort of what Michele was saying, like, I agree. You always hear people say, you should do what you love, and they just leave it at that. And to me, that's always been like a no-brainer. Like, well, of course, why would I intentionally pick something that I don't love? And what they don't explain to you is that you need to do what you love, because what you love isn't always going to love you back. And it's going to tell you you're not good enough. It's going to tell you this was a mistake. You might go into debt because of it, but you wouldn't accept that sort of treatment from anything else in your life except from something that you love. And if you truly do love that, you will fight. You will tell it you are good enough. You will not listen to any of the negative things that people say to you, because it is what you want, and you have to fight for it. And emotional roller coasters, they're gonna happen. Some days you're gonna be up here, some days you're gonna be down here, up here, lots of time down here. You're wondering if it's ever gonna go back up. It will. And you just have to keep pushing for it. And so I also wish someone had told me that when I first started, because I had to learn the hard way. Yep. And so...
Yeah, Michele?
And to go along with what you guys are both saying, and what everybody's kind of said, is like finding your sisters and finding other people in the community that you can connect to. I recently made a list on Twitter that it probably has about 400 women in gaming and esports on there. if you want to subscribe to that little list, I highly recommend it, because then you can just check in and see what different women are doing. I tried to include women from all ethnicities, from all over the world, from all different kinds of career fields. So try to find other women who do what you do or do what you want to do, and look at them and see how they're succeeding, and understand that even though they may look like everything is dope, it's still really hard, and they probably had a hard time getting there. So respect the journey that everyone has, and know that you're going to have a journey too, and one day you'll be able to share it as well.
Let's hear from Catarina first. Sure. Come back. Yeah, Catarina, what's that one piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say, like, definitely be confident. And so what I would say to myself even is, like, we know our stuff. Like, we work in this industry and we have, like, areas of expertise, and we know our stuff. And so don't give anyone the power to tell you that you can't do this, or you won't be able to do this, or anything. Like, we're here because we love this industry and we love gaming. And I think we should never give the power to anyone to stop doing what we love, which is play games and make games and create content.
All right, final word from Chelsea. What do you got?
When you make it, because you all will, you're here today, pay it forward. Okay, the only way that we will see more female-focused games or more diversity in gaming is by having the companies that create the games, the companies that cover the games, and the fans that engage with the games be more diverse.
All right, guys. Huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much.